Hey everybody, my name's Ed. Okay, so we're going to do another graphic novel or trade review. This time it is going to be Kent State by Derf Backderf, Fort Denton, Ohio. So Kent State, um, Fort Denton, Ohio. It's an original graphic novel by Derf. It's published in 2020. It's based on the infamous shooting at a student protest. It combines history and drama in a very interesting way. It's been nominated for several awards and has been critically acclaimed. Okay, so this is a docudrama of the famous incident at Kent State University in 1970, where four students were killed by the National Guard while protesting against America's escalation of the Vietnam War. The story is told in dramatic form and is based on real people and events and heavily researched. Um, we have this. Okay, so John Backderf has been in cartooning since the 80s. He started out as a political cartoonist for local Cleveland newspapers. He started the City comic strip around 1990, which was published in various free newspapers across the country. Derf left the city in the 20 teens to concentrate on graphic novels and commercial art, which included designs for posters, t shirts, and CDs, as well as his work appearing in magazines like Playboy and the Wall Street Journal, newspapers like the Wall Street Journal. His graphic novel work has included books such as Trash and especially My Friend Dahmer, which has won critical acclaim and nominated for several awards. And Durf has also won awards such as the John F. Kennedy Award for Journalism for Cartooning and Eisner's for his Trashed and of course this thing here, Kent State. Okay, My Friend Dahmer. So the real life incident happened at the height of the Vietnam War and the counterculture movements. The Kent State University had been the site for several protests over America's involvement in Vietnam and police and military recruitments that took place on the campus. The shooting occurred on May the 4th, 1970, during a protest about the expansion of the war into Cambodia. The students who died were Allison Cross, Jeff Miller, Sandra Schumer, and William Schroeder. Miller and Cross were there to actively protest, and I guess Schroeder and Schroeder were just kind of there to watch. While during the early 60s, most Americans supported the war. The expansion of the war under Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon, and things such as the My Lai incident, started to change some Americans' perception of the war. Over the last previous years, the campus has seen several protests, including a speech by famed Yippie leader Jerry Rubin and multiple sit-ins leading up to the events. There have been other protests, marches, and an ROTC building have been set on fire, and people have thrown bottles at the local police. So there have been a lot of tension built up between the students, the local town folks, and the police. The protest started at 12 noon on May the 4th, and it was mostly peaceful at first, but at some point the National Guard asked the students to disperse. The protesters didn't comply. Tear gas was dispersed but was ineffectual, and the protesters became more belligerent. And the National Guard claimed that they feared for their lives, so shots were fired, and the rest is history. Okay, so the incident went on to be referenced multiple times in pop culture. It's inspired many songs. There's been fictional and factual recreations. Most famously, it was the subject of Neil Adams' song Ohio. A couple of other interesting things that you come to mind. If you ever see the movie The Trial of Billy Jack, they kind of do a school shooting, or sorry, the National Guard shoots up a school for like poor kids or indigenous or Native American kids or something like that. Uh, I have somewhere, I was going to dig it up, but I can't remember which box I put it in. Howard the Duck Black and White magazine number 6. There's a reference to it. There's a visual reference to it. Now, supposedly, the day before the massacre, Krauss put a flower in a rifle of one of the National Guard members who was standing around, and then his sergeant berated him. So the soldier threw out the flower, and then Krauss told him something like, "Flowers are better than bullets." So this scene is suggested in the opening of the Watchmen movie. So there's like a hippie who puts a flower in a soldier's rifle, and then that person's immediately shot. I should mention an earlier and probably a more iconic example of the flower in the flower in the soldier's rifle happened at a Vietnam protest at the Pentagon in 1967, and again the Kent State Pentagon flower rifle scene along with kind of the Black Lives Matter protest. It's also referenced in a highly criticized Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial from a few years ago. So the book takes the form of a docudrama. It's mostly factual, but it presents its events in the form of a narrative, a dramatic narrative. We cut to the points of views of various characters, from the students to the National Guard, and we're encouraged to identify with people on each side of conflict. It's well paced and it builds to a chilling climax. There's a lot of quiet moments and a good deal of believable characterization throughout the book. Durf includes notes and references in the back of the book. The book also ends on a final epilogue where Nixon is talking to his aides about Attica. And if you know what happened during Attica, Fred Hampton, 6 months prior to all this, and then taking in the book that we just read, it sounds particularly chilling. So Durf has kind of this funny, funky style of caricature and cartooning that sort of recalls Don Martin, maybe meets R. Crumb, with most of his influences surely being on the more underground alternatives and spook magazine side of comics rather than superheroes or adventure style art. Interestingly enough, Durf is able to pull off heavily dramatic scenes in this style. Somewhere you said that his biggest influence are Spain Rodriguez and Mad Magazine and punk rock, which is certainly believable. The art is basically in black and white with great use of gray midtones. The violence is upfront and graphic, but its shocking nature is a little bit undercut by Durf's cartoony style. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The text is about 250 pages, but it's kind of a quick read. The more quiet or dialogue driven scenes are maybe 6 to 9 panels, with more dramatic scenes being 3 to 4 panels per page. The medium to close up shots for the intimate conversations, pulling out for wide shots for more impactful scenes. Many times or a few times there's exposition or info dumps, but for the most part, I wasn't taken out of the story by this. It's funny because it worked here in the comics in such a way where it may not have worked in prose, and it definitely wouldn't have worked in a movie or TV format. Okay, and just to show you a little bit of the art, we'll just flip through it at random. Yeah, opening splash. The book basically starts like a month or a week or two, a couple of weeks, I should say, before the riot, and then kind of counts down. Okay, you can see it's kind of panel layouts. Here's an example of kind of info dump, but it actually kind of works visually. Like I said before, where it wouldn't have worked, I think, in another medium. Sometimes it doesn't work in comics as well. It just really just depends on how well the artist or artist and writer are able to pull it off. Who wants to be first, you bastards? And here we go. Flowers are better than bullets. Like I said, here with the more dramatic scenes. panels per page get larger, then there's something like here where they're more dialogue driven. Okay, I don't want to give too much away, even though we're talking about history from 50 years ago. Okay, so in conclusion, it's well written and well researched drama. The book humanizes the victims, but also humanizes the members of the guards. It's well paced and moving. It's a really good example of not just comic storytelling, but also comics journalism. Yeah.